is going to be like a fantastic episode for everybody who wants to make a mark in the financial sector. I think you are like one of the best leaders because you also got the Best Women CEO of 2020 award.
There's something called a visibility ring. So there are core jobs that are there in an organization. And if you're in those jobs, then the visibility increases.
When we talk about like women leaders in India, especially in the BFSI sector, the data says that 24% of the workforce comprises of women, but only 15% they move to the leadership. According to you, what are like those invisible barriers that nobody really talks about?
There are biases, women are always judged much harder than men. So if you're on leave for a day and say my child is sick, for a woman the kind of bias that is there is that, oh, she's always not available because family comes first for her. But if a man does the same thing, the comment will be the man is much more responsible. Look at him, he took a day off to take care of family. The society can help you. There are a lot of women who support other women at home, but like your mother-in-law supports, your mother supports. I got all those support, but I was a very big critic of me. I wanted to be the super mother, the super daughter, the super wife, the super everything. I wanted to be. And when I want to be that, I am pulling myself down. So we can't depend on others to change us. We have to depend on us to say that I will do what is important to me.
Money moves the world, and people who move the money shape the world. And yet, in one of the most powerful sectors of any economy, finance, very few women make it to the top. So the real question is that is it a pipeline problem, is it a perception problem, or something which is real deeper in the system that needs to be fixed? Today, we are not just talking about banking, we're talking about power, we're talking about leadership, and what it really takes to rise in one of the most demanding industries in the world. Joining me today is Pankajam Sridevi, who has led at the highest levels, from global financial institutions like the ANZ Bank, Commonwealth Bank, to now shaping governance as an independent director in IDFC First Bank. This is a conversation about leadership and resilience, and about breaking through spaces where very few make it. Hi everyone. So let's welcome Pankajam Sridevi on our show today. Hi ma'am. Welcome to Talk with Nesh.
Thank you. Thank you. So nice meeting you after quite some time.
Thank
Neha.
you. Like I was telling you, that I saw you was in 2010, 2011 when I had just joined Australia New Zealand Banking Group. And I saw you at an event. I think it was a town hall meeting that was happening. And, the first thought that came to my mind is it's so nice to see a woman leader because at that time, and I think even today, we have such few women leaders, especially in the financial sector. But it was not just that. You had like a certain sense of confidence. You were strong at that time, and yet so rooted, so humble, and like I was telling you, so approachable at that time. And even today, when I just kind of reached out to you and you said yes to come to the podcast, so thank you so much. I am truly excited, honored, and grateful to have you on the show.
So I'm very honored, Neha, and I'm glad that you met me in ANZ and you remembered me. So I think I also feel very honored to be on your show and feel very proud that you're amidst a job, family, and all other engagements. You're into you're into interviewing leaders, and I'm sure that will help a lot of people, including men and women. It will help them to understand what's leadership, learn from others.
Absolutely, ma'am. This is going to be like a fantastic episode for everybody who wants to make a mark in the financial sector. And I think you're like one of the best leaders because you also got the Best Women CEO of 2020 award. So there's a lot for women also to learn from you. But let's start the episode by basically talking about the financial sector in India. A lot of things have changed, right? In the last decade, especially we talk about like digitalization, globalization, things, some things that have been there, some things that have rapidly changed. But I want to get like your point of view. What do you think has been like the single biggest shift that has happened in the last decade?
I think the biggest shift that has happened is that branch, going to the branch for making a transaction or doing banking has changed. So now it has moved from 10 to 5 banking, and on Saturdays 10 to 2, and on Sundays no banking mostly, has changed from banking being part of our life 24 bar 7. I think that is the huge shift that has happened in banking. And the reason for that is three or four, many revolutions, but at least two of them come to my mind.
Yeah.
The first one is the way banks have really embraced digitization. So today, mobile banking is so prevalent. Most of the things that you want to do with banks on a day to day basis is all done through digitization, through mobile banking. I still remember that during my days when I was always looking at which is a Sunday branch and trying to take a house near that branch, because I was on rented homes then. Because Sunday was so important for banking, and every Sunday it was a ritual to go to the branch. I don't even remember the last time I went to a branch now, maybe 15 years ago. So that's the revolution. And the other one is that payment has become so easy with UPIs and wallets. The number of payments that we make a day, even to buy a half a kg of orange, we do a Google Pay or we do a UPI. And that payment integration with banks and various other new systems have become a huge change in the banking industry. So technology intervention has been best adopted by banks, I would say.
Absolutely. Uh, there's another question which is related to this that comes to my mind. Do you, if you had to make any predictions for like the next 5 years, can you think of like any trends or anything which is related to like the banks, the financial sector? Do you think, given the changes, the geopolitical change, and everything which is happening, anything
Yeah,
that
very hard to make prediction for 5 years. Neha, it's a very long time. But I think hyper personalization will happen in banking. It's already happening. It will happen much more hyper personalization. And the ease of banking, even now, for some of the things that we need to do in commercial or in institutional banking, still calls for a lot of paperwork and little more difficulty in banking. I wouldn't say difficulty, but ease of banking is less for certain aspects of banking today. I think that will completely disappear, and banks will be rated by the way they service customers. So customer is king will become, or queen will become much more true as days go by in banking. The geopolitical situation is so unpredictable. Tomorrow is unpredictable, so I don't want to predict on that at all. But I think the technology aspect has already made a revolution in banking that will further improve the way banking is done in India. Especially in India, it will further improve, and it will be to the advantage of the customer. However, the word of caution is the increase in spams and hackers. So I think the regulations will get stronger on financial institutions to safeguard the money and protect the people from hackers and spammers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely need like strong regulations there because every day we have like some new scam which is coming up. Great. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I want to actually talk about leadership aspect of your job, of course. Now, when we talk about like women leaders in India, especially in the BFSI sector, the data says that 24% of the workforce comprises of women, but only 15% they move to the leadership, and I think that number drops further if you talk about like really higher positions like maybe board of directors. So I Obviously we know that a lot of people, join the workforce, but then maybe at the mid career level, they start dropping down. And then, after the managerial level, we see that people leaving the workforce is pretty high. I want to know from you that, according to you, what are like those invisible barriers that nobody really talks about?
See, I think it is not in the banking sector alone. Of course, it's prominent in the banking sector. It is in all sectors. And the issue that you said, where women are very high at the down at the bottom of the pyramid, but just reduce as the years progress, is very common in all sectors. And banking is no different. And we have spoken about the reasons very so many times. Actually, the number one reason is what somebody, I think it is the PepsiCo CEO, Mrs. Nui, who said that the biological clock and the career clock are opposite to each other. And I really embrace that. It is so true. So as women grow in their career, when they reach the mid level, your responsibilities at home, so the woman gets married, has kids, and then move into the house of in-laws or stay close, and then have parents. So as you grow up in your career, the responsibilities of family also increases.
Yeah.
So now the choice of the woman, the easy choice is to leave the job or take another role that is not prominent. And I don't say that any job is not prominent, but still take a role which is not mainstream.
Yeah.
And then you just get slower in your career. And this happens all the time. And most of the women fall in this kind of a trap. I'm using the word trap of slowing down career at the mid levels. And then catching up to get to the senior levels is quite hard. It's possible, but it is hard. That is one thing. The second thing is, I always used to tell the people who work for me, there's something called a visibility ring.
Okay.
So there are opportunities for women to be part of strategic programs and strategic projects, be in the P&L, where you get P&L for banking sector or for any other organization. So there are core jobs that are there in an organization, and if you're in those jobs, then the visibility increases. So I call it a visibility ring. And if you're not in that ring for long and you're doing jobs that are important but not totally core, then you go farther away from the visibility ring and you become invisible slowly.
Absolutely.
So that's another reason why women don't reach to the top. And then there are biases, women are always judged much harder than men. So if you're on leave for a day and say my child is sick, for a woman, the kind of bias that is there is that, oh, she's always not available because family comes first for her. But if a man does the same thing, the comment will be the man is much more responsible. Look at him. He took a day off to take care of family. He's very responsible and he balances work and life. That will be the narrative.
Yeah.
So that is a very big bias that is there in the society. And it really starts with us as women. We already have that bias in us that, I'm not taking care of my work. So the bias starts with us, it spreads to everybody. And then, as I mentioned, the judgment is there very strongly on women. So women have to perform much better than men to get the same accolades. The reason for that is women are few, whereas there are a lot of men. So the prominence always come to the men than for women. I think I would have spoken this a lot of time in multiple forums, and still I feel pain to talk about the same thing again, Neha. But this is the fact of life, So women stand to lose in their career when they are 35 to 45, and that is the prime time when you grow. And after that, your growth gets slower, so you're not visible, you don't get into bigger roles, and somewhere you're lost, and then you just go very slow, and that's the reason why we don't see a lot of leaders at the top. It's nothing to do with capability, it has got to do with the way women treat their careers and the way others treat the careers of women.
Right, absolutely right. But I always also think about like the fix to the situation. I feel like how can we as a society fix this? Because like you said, we've been talking about this since time forever and the needle hasn't moved much. And you mentioned Mrs. Nui also, she was also talking about this. And in one of the interviews, she also mentioned that maybe the women should have more support of like maybe the in-laws or maybe like grandparents and the extended family to come and help with child raising and things. But other than that, is there anything that we need to fix as a society, any solution or any suggestion from your
See,
side?
we are very strong on our society, on the way that others should think of us. We are very strong on that, and I think we have to look at what makes things important for you. I can give you a story. I was MD of Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and me and my husband were in a flat, in a flat in an apartment in a small complex. So I was never there for January 26th or August 15th or anything, because I always had to go to my company to hoist the flag and talk to all the people who support us, etc. So I was never available. So my husband used to go by himself. So one day when we were together and I was getting into the car, one of my neighbors said, "Oh, Mrs. Iyer, so happy to see you with your husband." You won't believe, Neha, for a minute I was shocked, and I kind of felt so bad that people think, is there something wrong with my family? Is that what people think about me? That was the first thought that came into my mind. And I went home. I was upset for a little bit that thought came to my mind. I said, what is wrong? She asked, and I could have said, yeah, I'm a busy woman and I go on Saturdays with my husband to the temple. That should have been the answer. But then the very next Saturday, again they met us and they're like, "Oh, Iyer, Mrs. Iyer, so nice to see you again." And then I told her, "See, if you want to see me with Iyer, you have to come to my apartment, B2031. We are there together." But what I want to tell is the pressure for women to satisfy the society is really not with the society, it is with the woman. See, at my age, with my experience, I felt pressurized when a neighbor made that statement. The day we don't get pressurized by these social kind of informations or statements, I think we will be successful. So
Amazing, yeah.
the society can help you. There are a lot of women who support other women at home. But like your mother-in-law supports, your mother supports, I got all those supports. But I was a very big critic of me. I wanted to be the super mother, the super daughter, the super wife, the super everything. I wanted to be. And when I want to be that, I am pulling myself down. So we can't depend on others to change us. We have to depend on us to say that I will do what is important to me. And I won't bother what my neighbor talks about me, because our society always expects women to be there for everything, women to be in the forefront. That's not necessary. So we have to change ourselves, and that is the easiest and the hardest thing to do.
Beautiful. I just love the statement that you made. It is indeed the easiest thing and it is indeed the hardest thing to do. And
Yes.
like the things that you were saying about the society, there's this line in Hindi which comes to my mind like, दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा रोग क्या कहेंगे लोग? You're
Yes,
always
yes,
thinking that what will
exactly.
the other person say? And
Say,
yeah,
and is that important to you?
exactly. we create those scenarios in our mind, and we feel so damn pressurized that we feel that okay, this is how we have to do and make everybody happy. Saying no
Yes.
is also something that women really struggle with. Cannot say no easily. Keep saying
Yes.
yes,
No
yes,
is a
yes to it.
two-letter word, but a very long sentence. You
Absolutely.
don't know, we don't know how to say no.
We don't know how
Exactly.
to say no. Yeah, so true. Yeah, thanks for that. I want to talk a little bit about your leadership journey, like at the early stage of your career. So, apart from things that you just mentioned, how did you prepare yourself? Because becoming a leader, leading people, it's not easy. And then to maintain that position, it's not just, I think it's not just about cracking the interview or getting a particular position, but that it's also about doing justice and maintaining yourself for so long, for 20 years, like you said, you've maintained yourself in this position. So were there any things that you did early on in your life? I want to know, just to prepare yourself, or were you ambitious? How were you like?
Yeah, I was always ambitious, but I never gave up anything that I thought is needed to be done for the family. But I was ambitious, and I took up lot of challenges in my career. Like I moved from manufacturing to technology, which is kind of unheard of because you have to start from scratch when you're getting into a new kind of organization, a new domain. You have to really start from scratch. So I moved from manufacturing to technology to banking. And
Wow.
every move I made, I took lot of risks. I became a student. I learned from people who are 20 years younger to me. I was not at all shameless for that. Or I was shameless to do that, to learn from everybody and anybody. And I hired people who can support me to lead with real authenticity, like lead with conviction and authenticity. I had very smart people around me. And something that I learned over time is that a leader need not know everything. So I was not shy to say, sorry, I don't know this. Please go and ask another person who's there with me or who's their leader or anybody like that. Or telling, I'm not sure about this. I think we have to learn and dig about these things together.
Yeah.
So I think I was always ready to accept that I don't know everything. And that's a fact about everyone. And therefore I think I built that authenticity and trust with the people, and I never shied away from showing my vulnerabilities, Neha.
Mhm.
If I felt like crying, I cried because I'm a human. I don't need to show supernatural powers which really I didn't possess when I grew up in my career, and I don't have it now also. So like any other person, I didn't have any difficulty to show my vulnerability. That didn't mean that I cried every second day, but if I felt like getting emotional, I get emotional. And I think authenticity is defined by being yourself.
Yeah.
And when you are yourself, I think everybody gets it. Even a 5-year-old child knows whether you're authentic or not.
True,
So
true.
I try to follow these simple things in my leadership style. And as you said in the beginning, in the intro, I try to be as available for the team as possible. And I never looked at what level were there or anything like that. I just looked at, do they need me? Do they
Mm.
need to talk to me? And I encourage people to come and talk to me.
Thanks.
I
So,
don't think there is any big rocket science for this. Just be yourself, and people, and you'll become a magnet to attract people. And I didn't pretend to be busy ever
okay.
because I know that I have time.
But like you said, that you have to kind of raise your hands and take more opportunities, risks, and be in that visibility ring that you were talking about. A lot of women I see, they shy away because they feel like they feel they have this kind of an imposter syndrome, or they feel that they are not confident enough. Am I enough for this? Am I good enough? Can I pull this off? And this thing plays more in the heads of women as opposed to men. And also, like a World Health Organization, I was just reading their website, and they mentioned that anxiety also happens more amongst women, as compared to men. So it just basically gets me to think that confidence has always been an issue when you talk about like the two genders. Women are like they struggle more when you talk about confidence. Um, I want to know, like, how can women be more confident, and how can we basically get rid of the imposter syndrome where it's there? Like, if there is any time in your career where you kind of doubted yourself, and was there any moment where you thought that, okay, I don't know whether I can do this or not? How did you get over that?
It is not a moment, Neha. Multiple times I have felt that imposter syndrome, multiple times. And if I say that I didn't have that imposter syndrome, honestly, I'll be lying. I don't think anybody will be devoid of imposter syndrome. But I can give you an example. I was really given the job of managing director of India, and I became boss of my peers just overnight. So the MD left on a Friday, and Monday morning I go there as the
Oh,
boss, and I became boss of my peers. And
wow.
some of my peers were there in the leadership team even before I joined. So in seniority also I was not the senior most. And coming the next day when I got into the car, I was like, my God, will I be able to do the job?
Absolutely.
And I was that walk from the ground floor to the sixth floor where my boss was sitting on till Friday was the longest walk, one of the longest walks of my life, I must say. And when I get to the office, that's harder because you're like, oh my God, this office has suddenly changed. And and then I was little reluctant to even face the people who were there till Friday as my peers.
Oh,
Everything changes
dynamics
overnight.
change. Yeah, everything changes.
Dynamics just change, and I don't know what is in there in their mind. But I just, I just thought, I just sat quiet for 2 or 3 minutes, and then I told myself that ANZ will not make a mistake. They have seen a lot of qualities in me that made me the MD against 8 or 9 people who interviewed. So I told my mind, Pankajam, believe ANZ. Forget about yourself. Believe ANZ, a great company, and start doing your job. And you don't need to just become the boss of everyone, but you need to be the leader who will work along with them as a team, exploiting their capabilities and also putting my capability on the table. So many a times I justified to myself like that, and within one day I was like, no, it's not only ANZ that has not made the mistake, I have also not made the mistake to lead this team, because I think I have a lot of capabilities that will help the team to get to the next level. So imposter syndrome will come, but it has to be overpowered, and you have to get the confidence very quickly. I think it's left to you to look at all what you have achieved. I always do that. I've got all the accolades I've received through my career and the brickbats that I've received. And then I read through them and say, if all these people think I'm good, I am good. And I tell the imposter, shut up and get away.
Great, great. Um, okay, another thing that comes to my mind when you're talking about leadership is, and specifically like in the foreign organizations like foreign banks, for example, Commonwealth Bank and ANZ, you have to kind of you have to kind of partner with a lot of like global stakeholders. So people based in Australia. So there are like a lot of cultural differences there. You have to make sure that you kind of integrate that really well. So I want to know your perspective on this. That how did you navigate this?
So, Neha, I've always seen that, of course, cultures are different, but humans are the same. So, humans are not very different if you are building the trust in the people abroad. So, what do they want? When I look at what they want to make sure that the functions that they have sent to a country away from theirs work properly and that customer service is not impacted. That is their intent. So And in the beginning, when I go into my first meeting, they're not going to trust just like that. So you have to really build that, you have to showcase your capability and build that trust in them that the work that is given to India, work that is sent to India, is in safe hands. And I have seen that communication is a very strong way of getting connected to stakeholders. Just don't remain quiet and make the stakeholders or your partners. Now that stakeholder concept is gone away, it's partners are thinking that you're doing well. There's nothing wrong in communicating and saying these things are going well, these things are not going well. And then that communication will build more and more trust and will add to your emotional bank balance. So emotional bank balance keep increasing, and then suddenly there is something that goes wrong. The trust element will fall, but it won't go to zero. The bank balance will still be there. And the communication is so important to keep open all the time. Keep the communication channel open. It doesn't mean you can call and say, hello, I have nothing to talk, and keep the phone off. That is very foolish. You should have some matter to talk, and I'm sure there will be something to convey and make them feel comfortable that customer service is very safe in our hands, risk is completely taken care of, the people are really committed to the customer, and such fundamental things will bring that connect between any nations, any countries. It is borderless.
um, a lot of things that I personally struggle with is basically compartmentalizing my thoughts. Like this is especially like in the corporate field. I feel like uh everybody says that okay, this work is important, this work is important, and suddenly we have like 10 different things which are like number one priority. And obviously I feel this urge or this need to kind of solve. If there's a problem, I want to like just get to it and kind of solve it, like at this at that time, not waste time basically. But one of my senior colleagues, who used to be my mentor earlier, he told me that you don't have to worry about everything at today. Maybe something which is like of less importance, you need to know how to compartmentalize and probably park it aside and revisit it tomorrow. But that's something that I have struggled with because I have like 20 tabs open in my mind. I want to know, how did you manage? How did you do this? Yeah, how did you do this?
So multitasking is a skill. So 100 things you cannot look at, but multitasking is definitely a skill, and we shouldn't give that up. So you'll cook something, you'll take care of your child, and then you will also answer a mail. That's okay. That's okay as long as you can do it, because multitasking is a skill. But I think your question is more on prioritization.
Yeah.
You cannot do 20 things at a time, Neha, then you won't be at your best. So there is nothing that is so important that it can't be moved to another time or another day. So planning your day, I do a lot of planning. I really do a lot of planning even when I'm not in a corporate job. So imagine for this talk, I would have planned like 2-3 days back. I just looked at my calendar, put it in calendar. I looked at what time I should be ready, what is the other things that I have to remove. So even for 1 hour of work, I really do a very, very informed planning, and look at other things that I can club with today. So it's all about prioritizing what is differentiated work that you need to do that day. That is one thing. And also looking at who else can do the other 10 work that you think you have to do. Most of the time, it is, if you're in middle management, it is your inability to delegate. And your inability to delegate is because you think this work can be done only by me, and you internally feel important, Neha, but it's not true. You can delegate and make 80% of the things that are not critical or differentiated being done by others. So if imagine in your basket, if you're doing only 20% of the work, then you do it with lot of efficiency and within time. So delegation, taking help from others, doing what is very important, trying to push out what is not so important, and being happy about what you're doing, that's very important. If you task switch multiple times, then you're creating waste. And at the end of the day, you think you have not done anything. That is a very not a good position to be in, so but you feel happy that you have done all the critical work, all the differentiated work. You feel happy when you have really delegated or taken support from somebody else. That makes you a smart person, and
Yeah.
I always look at that, Neha. I really get the help in my house to be like empowered like anything. She does a better job than me in managing the kitchen, and
Yeah.
I do cook every day, so I don't take away the responsibility of that because I love cooking. That is the main reason. And the other things that I don't need to do, my help does it. She has a like a credit card add-on card of mine with her, and she
Okay.
does most of the work with it. So we need to find support like that. We can't say all our in-laws, our sisters, mothers, brothers, all of them must be around us to support us. It doesn't work.
Doesn't.
We have to put a hand out for support. And as women, we are a bit weak on that because everything we want to do in perfection to the
Yeah.
way
True.
that I want it to happen. If
Mm.
you take help from others, you have to compromise a little on that. And if it does not impact the outcome of the work, I think it's a clever way of doing it.
Perfect. I totally agree. Delegating, like you said, and sometimes, and we do not have to look for perfection. We do do that. Um, if you had to give like any advice to young women who are now joining, especially like in the financial, what would be your nuggets of advice for them?
Yeah, I think a little bit of building a career identity is very important.
Career
For
identity.
Yeah, there's something called career identity, isn't it? We have identity as a mother, we
Yeah.
have identity as a sister, we have identity as a family member or
Hmm.
as a wife. All these identities are there as a person, but we do not really look at what should be my career identity. So if I look at my career, it's my choice. See, I may decide that I take a break to take care of my family for 3 years. That's your choice. But that you can plan in your career. And you say that my career identity, those 3 years, I'm going to pause, or I'm going to change the route of my identity by being at home but building ABCD capabilities, building my network. All those things you can do while you're offline from work.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of things, but plan it, build an identity for your career. Most of the, as women, we don't give that identity for career and decide on what is my North Star. If you decide that as a youngster, then you can plan for it. And you can take any number of breaks. I have taken break from my career when my son was born and he was small, but I never gave up on learning. So I continuously kept myself up to date. I was relevant in the market, and that's why after 1.5 years, the first job that I went to, I secured it. So you can build that identity irrespective of what is the current state of what you are in your personal life. And you have to build networks. See, leadership is not about transactional or transformational anymore. See, transactional is important, transformational leadership is also important. But the most important leadership style that is there today is networking leadership. Many a
Wow.
time as women, we say that, okay, oh my God, I finished my work, I have to rush home. I'm not saying we can't do that because we will have a child, we'll have a mother or mother-in-law, father-in-law, all our family will be looking for us. But the inherent difficulty in women to network is not because of all these constraints. We put the constraints on us so that we can run away from networking. And the men, who are networking doesn't make it easy for us
Right.
because they are used to being a close circle, so they
Yeah.
continue to be in the close circle, but it's not their fault. It is simply because we have never tried to really get into that circle of influence or circle that people build for networking. We have to put a little more effort to get in, and then we are accepted, so we will fight for that acceptance. We will get into the circle till we are accepted. However, if you want acceptance, we must also be relevant. If you don't have any topic to discuss or anything to talk in a network or have anything to contribute, then the network automatically just fades away.
Yeah.
So, networking is very important in leadership, and it has to start at a very, very young age. Aspiration is also equally important. What's your North Star? Your North Star, somebody told me, Meenakshi Iyer, who was working with me in ANZ, she was very young. What's your ambition? When everybody was asked, she paused a bit and she said, I want to become the MD of a company.
Wow.
And I said, she looked at me, I said, don't think that I'm offended, because by the time you become MD of this company, I would have become CEO of some other company. So you don't need to think you're grabbing my job. But I'll always remember Meenakshi Iyer because she had career identity and she had a North Star.
What is
So
she
work
doing now?
towards it, work towards being what you want to be. See, it's not what others want you to be. So I don't want to impose and tell all women, all of you have to become CEOs of companies. But if you aspire, don't make the gender like a bias on it. Gender is not a bias for growth. Even if society puts unconscious bias, we must break it. You have the power. If you really identify your career, have a career identity, then you have the power to reach where you want to reach.
Amazing. I love it. I think I'm going to follow that advice
I
because,
think you're already doing it. You're
yeah,
broken from the
I
normal norms.
because I just kind of also like the point that you said, what makes you happy? So this makes me happy. But
Yes,
yeah,
that's so important. It's not what makes somebody else happy. It's what
exactly.
makes you happy.
Yeah.
So many people ask me, why did you leave a high paying corporate job? And I'm like, I want to stop it when I feel that I've done enough and there are others to do it and I want to learn something new. So I want to really learn something new. I don't want to have a full time, very busy corporate job. That's my choice, and I'm happy with that choice. That's what I said, career identity. 1 year before leaving CBI, I decided that I'm going to leave this job and look for something else.
Mm,
So that's what I'm calling as career identity.
absolutely. Thank you. So, what is Meenakshi Iyer doing now? Are you in touch with her?
Yes, I don't know when she's now beyond managing director of Standard Chartered Bank. So she
Oh,
achieved what she wanted to achieve long
amazing.
back, long back.
Wow. I mean, that is like
I
clarity
got the
of vision,
opportunity.
right?
Sorry?
Clarity of vision, your North Star,
Yeah,
like you were
that's
talking.
career identity, clarity of where you want to reach. And that clarity can be that I don't want to grow very fast. I don't want to get to the top. I'm fine with middle managers. I just don't want more women to be in that group, being happy in the mid. If there is a woman who wants to do that, so be it. But I think we have to really ignite the aspiration in women, because it's hard for women to go forward. Therefore, they shouldn't give up.
Yeah,
If they don't want to go forward, they can go at their pace. But
exactly.
we want most of the women to go forward at pace and reach the top. That should be the aspiration.
Perfect. I have a few rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
So, quick, quick. The first one is one leadership myth you want to break.
That bosses are always busy. Everyone
Okay.
has time.
Yeah. One thing women should stop doing in their careers.
I think it's feeling guilty when they are at work saying that their children are not looked after, and being guilty when they are home, saying that they didn't do the work as much as what they wanted at a day on a
Perfect.
daily basis.
Yeah,
That women should give up.
absolutely. One habit that changed your life.
I think being humble when I'm successful, being humble and grounded, and being courageous when I went wrong. Like when I say courageous is accepting that I went wrong, but not saying that, oh my God, I've done this. What is life for me? So being very courageous to take it and go forward, rectify it, and speak up when I wanted to say something. I never feared what the other person will say. I only wanted to ask when I wanted to ask. So I was fearless in my leadership, but very humble when it comes to success.
Beautiful. Okay, final question that I ask all the women leaders. Do you think that, okay, can women have it all, or is this just an unrealistic expectation?
I think it depends on the definition of all. So if you want to be, as I mentioned earlier, do all the roles that you want to do or the society has imposed upon you, and if that is the definition of all, then you can't have it all. However, if you're a realistic woman, you have a very good environment or a support system that you have developed within your family household. You're very clear about what you will do at home and what you will do at work. You balance or you integrate your work and life in such a way that one day something will be important at home, you carry out that. Another day something will be important at work, you do that. So if you do a work life integration, if you get lot of support from everyone that you need, irrespective of whether it's family, friends, office, and if you really do things for yourself, recognize you, and you think about me time, and also develop yourself, women can have it all.
Wow, amazing! Thank you so much, Pankajam. I've really loved chatting with you and hearing your insights and incredible thoughts that you've shared today. I have learned a lot, especially the career identity and the North Star bit. That's something that I will personally adopt in my life. And I really hope that people who are listening to us they have a lot of takeaways and they will kind of follow that in their life too. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching us till the end. I really hope that you found value in today's conversation. Please do like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear this. I always believe that we do not have to look far for inspiration because there are so many incredibly inspiring stories all around us. Because as they say, that no one else sees the world the way you do, so no one else can tell the stories that you have. Thank you.